So the other day we took a look at the New York Islanders who have been surging here out of the gate to start the season. Had a little bit of a bump in the beginning. Well, today we're talking about a different team, but kind of the same story in the defending Stanley Cup champions St. Louis Blues. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe, and let's take a look at the St. Louis Blues current streak that they are on. So the St. Louis Blues right now have a record of 11 3-3, and we are sitting here on a Thursday. And just a little bit of a preview, make sure to check out every Friday our weekly power rankings. We are up to week 6 now. It's crazy that we're that far into the NHL season now. I feel like doing the week 1 it feels like it was yesterday that I did week 1 power rankings, so get ready for that. This winning streak that the Blues have been on is definitely going to be a factor in this week's power rankings, so make sure to check that out. But the Blues right now are 11-3-3 in the Central Division. They're tied for second in that division, technically third, but second, tied for second in the division, so they have the playoff spot locked down. The St. Louis Blues had a pretty good start to the season. They played fairly well, had a little bit of a dip, maybe in 3 or 4 games, and most notably one against the Islanders where they were up 2-0 late in the third against an Islanders team that was 1-3. They ended up 2-3 at that point against the Islanders. They ended up blowing that game to the Islanders, a very frustrated Blues team. They would then head home to take on the Vancouver Canucks and kind of have the same story, ended up losing that one in a shootout to the Canucks. So there was a little bit of concern that there may be a hangover from what we saw from the Blues last season. Well, since then, they've completely rewritten the script here in St. Louis. The Blues are 11-3-3, like I mentioned. Their goals for total, they're 6th best in the NHL right now with 54 goals scored this season. Their goals against is pretty average. It's sitting at 19th in the league, so it's definitely not as good as the goals for, but it's definitely something that they could improve, but it's not necessarily a weakness, only giving up 49 goals this season. So at the end of the day, the plus minus is better. So that, by 5, but that does make a difference. And for the Blues in particular, that is huge. And they've been on this pretty hot streak, kind of the same story as the Islanders, again, with some injuries to the lineup and some pretty notable guys, most notably Vladimir Tarasenko, who is out with an upper body injury, as well as Alexander Steen, who has a lower body injury. Maybe Steen is a lesser value to the Blues at this point than Tarasenko, but nonetheless, those are depth. That's a depth player as well as a Tarasenko player who the Blues really rely on for the goal scoring. Being a top 6 point producer on this team. And looking at the power play and penalty kill, they have a 26% on the power play, so not too great. Could be better, but again, it's not that easy to score on the power play, so it's not terrible numbers. And they have an 81% penalty kill, which is pretty solid overall. Taking a look at the top 5 point producers for the St. Louis Blues right now, leading the way is Ryan O'Reilly with 17 points for the Blues. Brayden Schenn with 16 points, tied with David Perron, each of them having 16 points. So David Perron came back to the Blues, and he's finding some success here. Alex Pietrangelo, the big captain, at number 4 on this team in points with 14. Right behind him with 14 as well is rounding out the top 5, Jaden Schwartz. So the St. Louis Blues, their big guys are scoring and they're producing. Even with Tarasenko out, he still has 10 points on the season for the Blues. The Blues recently just traded one of their very highly thought of when he was drafted players in Robbie Fabry. He was traded. Now they bring in Jacob De La Rose. A lot of skepticism for the Blues fans in terms of that trade, just because of the value that Robbie Fabry, the ceiling he may have still to this point, going to Detroit, and any trade with Steve Yzerman, and it's a little bit weird and out of nowhere. Definitely a little bit concerning. So we'll see what happens. Jacob De La Rose is a pretty solid player. You know what you're getting in De La Rose. He has 4 points on the season. But hopefully the Blues can use him in their depth, and maybe a little more so than they could with Robbie Fabry. So That's pretty much it for the St. Louis Blues. Like I said, make sure to check out the power rankings tomorrow because the Blues are going to be featured in that for sure. There's definitely a shakeup moving into this week's power rankings, and we'll get into that tomorrow. But overall, the Blues, the goaltending has been okay. That's definitely been one of their weaker points. Jordan Binnington has been average, maybe a little above average, but again, they're giving up a lot of goals against, and I hate to say it, but more so because of the backup, Jake Allen. He's definitely had some struggles here and there, and that was a problem during that little skid that they had through the first 10 games of the season was because of Jake Allen having to step in and not really producing the way they need him to in the goal. So let me know what you guys think of the St. Louis Blues. Got some good news here with the Blues. I remember, really a week ago talking about the Blues maybe having some issues and things like that, the Stanley Cup hangover. They're playing pretty well right now. So make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Check out the rest of our videos here at Goal Line Hockey. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.